Yeah, so we're looking at some of the bonnet detail now. So I think what I'm going to do is just create a layer, another layer called bonnet detail, just so I don't have to look at the bonnet as well, which is obviously not that one, it's that one, which has got a lot of stuff in it. So this surface here that I've just created, which I did from these curves up here, we put that in. So we'll continue doing this. So in top view, I can put in a surface between these two curves here. So I'm just going to use skin between that curve and that curve. And then we'll move that surface down. And put some sections on, just like we did before. And then we can pull and push these CVs around. So at the moment, all of these surfaces are flat, and they will need some crown on them. So later on, I'll make them degree 2 going across. But for now, it doesn't matter because I just want to get them roughly in the right place. And later on, we'll work on exactly where those should be, because obviously they hang off they're going to hang off this bonnet surface, and we need to make sure that, well, I suppose I can do it now. Let me see what surfaces we've got. So we've got that surface there. There's a bit of an area in here with nothing. There's no surface in there. Let's just take the mesh off. So there's an open air at the minute, but I did trim this out. So let's untrim that. And we might as well just align this and see what happens, just in terms of position. So let's go and align that. G0 project Z. And obviously we'd have to increase the degree if we need to. So we'll make it degree 5 just so it aligns. Now if we bring back in the mesh, then what you sometimes find is that because I've created those curves, I just created those curves in the top view based on what I could see on the shaded model. And what you often find is that when you actually put it into 3D, it's not quite in the right place in terms of where the sections go. Now, the only one I can see that's not quite right is here, but then our main block isn't quite right either. So there's something, we need another surface in here anyway, because that's where I trimmed that to. I don't think I've got a surface in there. Oh, I have got a surface in there. So in fact, I could have split that into 2. So there's that surface there, which in fact I should have used. So let's go and pick that. But these sections actually look really close, so I think I'm going to be happy with that. So let's just have a look at that, just to clarify what we've got. So we've got that situation. So this is going over 2 surfaces. I'll get rid of that curve, not that one. I'll get rid of that curve on surface. So I'll keep the ones along here, which were the trimmed ones. In fact, I'm going to trim that back out again, which is the great thing about curves on surface. As long as you tidy them up every so often. Now in this view here, we want to detach this across here. So we're going to go into detach. I should really open up the menu because we don't want to keep originals on, but by default it should be on. And then if we go and pick that edge, so I'm using Control Alt there. Yeah, sometimes it comes up at the right spot, but actually what we want is the intersect there. So a very useful thing, if you find that you're not getting the intersect in a menu and you're expecting to get it, if you go into construction point, you're guaranteed to be able to put a point on that intersect. So that always works. And then if I go back into Object Edit and Detach, now I can pick that point. So I can just do Control on that and pick that point. And that's a good trick to know. It always gets you out of difficulties. Obviously, I can get rid of that point now. You can see it comes up and says surf point there. So now we can align that into here. So let's go into Align, G0 Project Z. That's going to go into there. And because we've got a high degree there, fairly high degree, which we could, if you want to really make a great model, then you will always want to minimize the degrees as much as possible, because it just makes everything much easier. The danger is that the degree tends to get higher and higher and higher the more you align things, but if you try and keep it to a minimum all the time, then that's always a good idea. So let's bring our sections back on and all the mesh in, and just see how we're doing on the sections there. So there's a bit of a difference there, but I think that's probably because this surface, which I ought to check, I should have checked it beforehand, of course. If I put G2 on there, I wonder whether I actually had G2 continuity. I didn't. Oh, that was clever, wasn't it? So let's go back and to do that one again. So I'm just deleting the curve on surface there. So I should have fixed that first, and I'd forgotten because it's some time ago when I actually did this. I remember it now that it only has degree 2 across there. So I just want to align that in there. So I'm going to go into Object Edit, Align. It's not a project, it's just into an edge. So I'm going to just pick up on the trim edge there, use edge there. I want G2, and I want to pick that into that edge. And I want to put history on, and then I need to increase the degree across this way because it's not enough. So degree 3's done it. Let's just put proxy display on and see where we've come from. So no real noticeable difference in the CVs there. So that's fine. And then we'll project that back onto there. So back to there. So we've got that edge in. This edge, obviously, we could change later. The surface up here is slightly different to the mesh, but we'll just live with that. It joins up again here and joins up to the bonnet, so I'm just going to live with that. There will be some differences to the original mesh whenever we build these surfaces, of course. So now we've got that in. So this one can also be aligned. Let's align that to here. Surface here. Again, in Project Z, there's a gap at the minute. Bearing in mind we are working to very, very tight tolerances, 0.001. So, you don't have to do that if you're working on a concept model, which is what we're doing. So that's pretty close actually to the sections. But sometimes you find that when you project the curve on and then you try and align, it actually doesn't quite suit the data. And but here it's actually pretty good. Certainly good enough for what we want to do. Now the other thing is we've got this corner blend here, so we can do that by once again putting in a skin here. It's going to be between that curve there and that one there, and then we'll just move that down. And the skin's got history on it by default at the minute. I mean, actually, the other way you can do this, I could just align that actually, even though it's up in space, you can do an align onto this surface. Now, the only thing is that's also going to go across that edge there. Let's just take those curves off. So the surface we're looking at is this one. And let's just do it in 2 bits. So I'm going to do that. Actually, let's just make sure we've got no history on here, because if I've got history on, this could cause problems. I can see this history on there. I don't really want that. So let's delete the construction history, because what I'm going to do is do what we did before. Let's just take the sections off for a minute. So I'm going to do what I did before, which is untrim that. You can see these curves on surface here, and this is where you can end up with multiple curves on surface and problems when you come to trimming, because you can see that's just from those blocks that we've aligned, and we probably want to get rid of those curves on surface in a minute, but we'll do that in a sec. So I'm going to align it to this surface, even though it's not quite right, and we can do it from up here. So we can go into Align, G0, Project Z. So if I do that into here, obviously that's just going to pull that edge down, which isn't quite what we want. We also want this edge to come down at the same time. If you put blending on and add that row, then it brings the whole thing down. And the other factor is that if you set the blend factor to 0, which is what we've got, then it effectively just moves it onto the surface, which is brilliant, because you don't even need to move it then. So it's more or less in the same angle as it was up here, which is actually flat, which isn't quite the right angle we want, but never mind. But it's a way of using that combination of blend, taking all the rows with you and putting the blend factor at 0 is a great way of moving things around onto new surfaces without having to do much in the way of rework. Obviously the position's not quite right, but it's very, very close. And in fact, at this point, again, I need to detach this, so I'm going to split that into 2. So let's go into plan view, into top view there. Oh, that's gone. And just while we're here, one thing that was annoying me the other day is you see that little the red arrow and the green arrow there, that every so often I accidentally clicked on it. Probably not going to do it now, but you click on it like that and it suddenly swings the view around and you think, oh great, it's gone into a completely different view. You know, I didn't mean to do that. You can actually get rid of that if you go into general preferences, and I just need to find it first. Yes, finding the thing is something else, but here it is. So under general preferences navigation, it says show point of interest jack. So if I take that off, then when we do this, we don't get that arrow, and so you can't accidentally pick it. So it's worth knowing that. So again, we need to detach it to that point. So once again, if I go and use construction point, I can do that. I can pick up on that exactly there, find that intersect, then we can detach exactly at that point using control. So we've now got that. So I'm going to get rid of these. I'm actually going to get rid of those curves on surface because I can see those are going to cause problems later on, and get rid of the one that we just created. And then we'll do an align now into just this edge, or this surface rather. So I haven't had to increase the degree there, and because it's shorter, we've actually got a position match. So let's do that one into there, and then we can trim this back to here. Back in. So this doesn't join up at the minute, because when I pulled these surfaces down, or this surface down, I just aligned it to the top edge and brought it all down. It's all parallel. It's not actually the same orientation as the surfaces in here. So let's isolate those ones. And then we can align those. So you can see there are different angles. And what we can then do is do a similar trick where I do align that just in position, bring that down, so in Z, and then I can put blending on. So I can actually blend it all the way around to the other end if I wanted to, without history on. And then I'll do this end to there. Now it says it's failed, and it's because, why is that actually wrong? Okay, it's failed. It's not. Sometimes you'll get a failure because you've got history on, but I haven't got history on, which then puzzled me for a second. The reason it's failing is because if you look at this edge versus this surface, it doesn't quite. It goes over the edge, so it won't project it. Now this one will. So this one should do. So if I do that one first. So that projects that onto there, and I know it's not accurate, but it doesn't matter at this stage because we're just roughing things in, and you know, we're going to increase the degree across there in the future. But here you can see I'm picking up. I've got blending on. I've got all of the rows, so it's picking everything up. It's effectively moving the whole thing downwards onto this surface with a blend factor of 0. Important to have the blend factor of 0. If you put in 1, it doesn't do quite the right thing. Put it into 0 and it'll pull it down. into where you expect it to be. And then this one actually needs to be aligned to here. So we've got to be careful here, not project, because otherwise we'll create a curve on surface right on the edge, which we don't want. So we'll do it to the edge. And we just need to make sure that we're not blending it too far. So I've picked up every single hull here and it's pulled it off there. So we need to take that back one, and then it'll keep at that end. Now, because we're blending from one end to the other, and we want to keep that, rather than blend factor of 0, if you put in 1, it'll be a more progressive blend. So it's keeping an eye on these factors is really important. Will save you time once you get the hang of it. Now this surface here, we don't actually need at all, because it's a block surface that I aligned, but it doesn't actually exist in space at all, because I've shortened it. So this one here, we can trim that back. So just trim that one for the time being. Let me take the CVs off it just to make it clearer. The reason I'm trimming it rather than converting it is that we can get back to the block if we wanted to, but we probably won't need it, to be honest. It's ended up so short that it's not really necessary. And I'm just trimming these just to make it clearer what's going on here. Now we haven't got continuity on here. So let me just make sure that we've got, even if it's rough, we're just going to use G2 and align that in G2. So the reason I did it with G0 first was just to get it all nicely blended from one end to the other. I'm going to put blending on just of 1, just so we bring down that point in the middle. This can all change anyway. I mean, obviously the alignment to the main block is changing as a result of doing this as well. And I should, strictly speaking, I should have vector Z on. So that those CVs just move up and down in the Z direction. The fact that it's not, there's a gap doesn't matter, because when these become degree 2, that'll all happen anyway naturally. And so it's just to get it roughly in the right place. And then on that one again, we can put in G2. Again, it doesn't matter that it's not exactly matched. We can make that degree 2, but it doesn't really matter at this point at all. This one is probably pretty close anyway, I would imagine, because it's come from 2 parts of the same surface. Yeah, so there's a bit of a change, a bit of a mismatch there, but again, it doesn't really matter at this point, because this is just a rough model here. So I'm just trimming that back out, and we'll take the CVs off that so we don't have to look at them going overlapping there. And then we can bring in our sections just to make sure that we've not changed anything dramatically. So that all works fine. Let me just save that. And then off this edge, we can, I did create curves up in space inside that, but we probably don't need those. We don't need those. We can just create MS draft surfaces off here. So let's just do that. So MS draft is in the Z direction. Pick that point, flip the surface around because it's going the wrong way. Put in some length there that's a bit more appropriate. Ultimately, I mean, either we'll just make these all the same length, or what we might do, which is usually the best thing, is you see where the bottom edge is there. If I look on the mesh there, what we would do eventually is to create a construction surface in that space that we can then use to trim everything back to. We won't bother to do it at the minute, but that's the best thing to do. Now I've got history on there, thank goodness, because I can then rotate that and until we get the section pretty much where we want it to be. And again, because we've just created this edge of curves in space, you sometimes find that there's a bit of a difference between the sections that we're getting and that actual surface, but it's not very far away. And because this is Concetto, I'm not going to measure that. I think as long as it all looks consistent and is very similar in design intent to the original, then I'm not going to worry too much. Now this is just a 100mm length. We want to make it oversized because then when we trim it out to a construction surface, we've got plenty of surface to trim to. And then we'll go around to the next one. So these corners, sometimes you find on corners like that, and this one's actually okay, but you sometimes find the CVs go a bit weird. I mean, that one looks a bit weird compared with these ones, and that's just the way it is. And we can easily fix that manually anyway if we wanted to. Let's go to the next one. So I'm just keeping the angle the same for all of them at the minute and just seeing what happens really. So we haven't really got enough sections in here to tell what's going on there. So let's make, let's put some more Y sections in. So I'll put them at 50mm increments. Now here we've got, this is deviating quite a bit from that data. It's mainly the angle rather than the top. So let's go and just move this lower hull, this one here. Now the reason it was struggling to find the right hull is because if I go into here, I've changed my pick box size to 20 to make picking individual points easier. But it's actually because of the size of that, it actually then tries to pick two holes. So if I just drop that a bit, that might make it a little bit easier to pick. So that was a bit easier because if I get close to here, then it doesn't know which hull to pick, and so you can adjust that pick box size, depending on what you're doing. So I'm mainly concerned about the angle of that, just to make that a bit better. So like something like that. And then this one also, we can do the same thing. I can just eyeball it. I don't need to actually align it. But of course I can then align it at this point. So let's align that one to there, and then because we're making a change and we don't really know what the angle was to start with, I just put plenty of blend on there. The degree, you notice the degree, because we've been splitting surfaces up and taking them off more complex edges, the degree has gradually gone up a little bit. We just need to keep an eye on that and make sure that that's not too far out. Again, I'm not going to worry about that at the minute, the position mismatch. I'm going to go around here, just rough it in, and then I'm going to go back and align things properly in a minute. So this one here, obviously that needs to be aligned there, and we don't want all of that blending on, but maybe we'll put a little bit of blend on. Maybe we'll just pick up that center point, but it really doesn't matter because everything's a bit rough at the minute anyway. And then on this one, okay, we can, so that's affecting the middle again, but it doesn't really matter one way or the other. And so the main thing is, are we close to that data? And it does look like we are. So let's just isolate these surfaces now. So I'm now going to go round again and just now refine that. We've got that, and let's take all the sections off. So I'm just going to check what curves and surface I've got here. So if I drag a window around there and just have a look, see whether it picks up anything, it says curves on surface. If I put edit points on, you can see them quite clearly then. And because it's not easy to spot sometimes and see where they are. So we've got an edit point curve, which is that one. So that's number one, that's number two. Now it said there was a third one, and I'm not sure where that one is. Not that one, not that one. So there's a third one in there. So if you find that there's more, maybe no. If you find there's more curves on surface than you think there should be, just delete them. It's the safest thing to do. And then we can just easily bring those back anyway. So I'm constantly doing that, deleting them and then bring them back and just making sure they're always clean. So this time we will create two, whereas before there was only one. So it says two curves on surface there. That's absolutely fine. And then this one, we'll have that one and that one we'll want. So you can see those clearly now, and we should just go and check that we've got position on there. Right, that one hasn't, and that one hasn't. So should have probably just aligned those instead. So let's go back into align. G0 project said that one onto there and that one onto there. And hopefully these are flowing in there, because otherwise we'll have a problem there. So now we're going to go round. I'm going to start putting some crown on these surfaces. And so we need our sections back. Just to understand how much crown we want to put on. So there isn't much crown on the original mesh there, but there should be something. So we make that degree 2. Right. We make that degree 2, and then if we go and pick a hole, and we just do it normal. So we just raise that up to give it a little bit of crown. And then we've got 2 surfaces in here. Let's get rid of this surface because that's getting in the way. So obviously we've got the same amount of crown on this surface here. So we could use a line here. So I'm going to align that with G2 going around here, and we increase the degree to, so I've got project on by mistake, so I need edge on, not project, otherwise I'm creating a curve on surface there, which I don't want. So we'll make that degree 2. Now you can see that's not quite aligned in curvature. If I make that degree 3 going around the corner, the chances are it will. So let's make it degree 2 to start with, and so it goes all the way around to here. So I want to lift everything all the way around to the same value. So if I put blending on and blend all the way to the far end, and we put the blend factor down to 0, it will lift this end up. So we should have, if I look at the curvature on there, there should be similar curvature going around on each of those. So let's just change the scale on there. So you can see it's not far off. It's so we've got, strictly speaking, I usually set that, you know, the number of curvature displays that we get to the same as the number of holes, because then each hole relates to each set of curvature there. So it sort of flattens off a little bit at this end, but that's probably okay. And then of course this one needs to also follow suit, so we can go round and align that one to there. And again, I'm picking up on all of the holes. I want edge on. I increase the degree to 2 and see what we get. Now that one's, I know that's not aligned yet, that one there. We'll come back to that in a minute. And obviously this is taken this off this position here. Of course, I've taken that surface away, haven't I? So yeah, and this one as well. So again, I'm deleting curves on surface here, because I thought this would happen, that would actually change things. And then this one's going to be degree 2 as well. Well, this one, because it's trimmed at the minute, it's I mean, I think actually I'm just going to trim convert that one, just going to make it simpler. Because then we can align that either way. It doesn't matter which way we align that. And so this one, if I align that in just position, so it affects the whole thing with blending on all the rows, and we increase the degree to 2. I've missed one row there. So let's get that one. So it's picked up everything. So everything's should have the similar curvature on it. I can go and put G2 on there and see how far out we are. So we're not very far out. It says 0.2. So if I go back the other way and just align that in G2 with no blending on, I was hoping that was going to go straight there, but it's still saying it's out slightly. Let's go into, you can see the difficulty is that we, as we align these things or try to align them, we do lose the continuity to the main block. And so I'm just going to align that back into there, and then we'll try and align this into here. This is going to be edge. And so we've got this tiny, I mean, it's so small, it's 0.106, tiny little error there. If we go into plan view, I mean, I'm quite surprised at that. What you find, if you go into this menu here, there's a thing called tangent balance, and it's very surprising. But if you've got the spacing between these two CVs is tapered slightly, which I can hardly see there is any taper on it at all, but it's slightly different to the taper on this side, and that can be enough just to throw that out slightly. So if I put tangent balance on, what happens is it fixes it by moving the CVs this way and that. If I take it off, you can see what that's doing. It's just moving it very, very small amount. You can actually do a similar thing. So once you see where that's taking it, sometimes it moves it so far that it would be unacceptable. This would be okay. But if you just want to move it by hand, knowing where that's going to go, just grab hold of that point there, and you can often just fix the curvature just by doing that, which seems very counterintuitive, but it's the maths behind it that does that. So this one I want to project back onto this surface. And of course that then breaks that by a small amount. Now we could just increase the degree and see whether that fixes it, which it does. Great. When you get into these details, then there comes a point when you have to increase the degree if necessary to get alignment to happen. And then we're going to go into, but you just want to delay that as long as possible so that you're not unnecessarily making the degree higher than you want. So this is one where it's going to be a bit of a problem probably. So let me just move, let's just get rid of those CVs because they're interrupting what we're looking at. So here we've got, if you look at the spacing there down to that way, that's pretty constant all the way. This one's much more tapered, and that's why we've got, I mean, it says there's a gap there actually. So let's have a look into there, because the thing is, if there's a gap of that size, then there's something seriously wrong, and we need to find out what that is. So if I put on edge there and go into there, do that. So that's okay, and it's sensible to put vector on as well, so that the CVs only move up and down in the Z direction. And then on this end, so we've got position on here. Let's try and get alignment on here. So we've lost vector because it always switches itself off. That locator there looks a bit suspicious to me. Let me just take that curvature display off. So let's just try and align that. Oh, so one thing we've got on here is actually skew, and we always want edge. We always want these edges to flow through, and maybe that's where usually edge is on, and I've not noticed whether it was or not. And so that might have been causing some problems around here in terms of aligning things. You just got to have your wits about you. I'm trying to do this quickly, of course, and it's so easy to get caught out by these tiny little things. Yeah, for some reason it's switching skew on every time, so I need to put edge on. That's what you normally want when you've got stuff like this going on. So this one, you know, again, we could try, we can't try tangent balance. Why is that? Oh, it's probably because it's into a trimmed edge there. So tangent balance isn't going to work, and we can't look at that. But what we can do here, because we're into a detailed corner now, and we've got crown on there, just increase the degree to 3. That's fine. Now we want to make sure that this, let's just check our curves on surface there. Let's go into a line, G0 project. So I'm going to try and get this top edge into here. So we've got curvature there, position there. Great, that's good news. I mean, this is another place where we might have increased the degree to 7. That'd be perfectly fine going around quite a complex corner like that. So all of this is now aligned. We just need these surfaces now to align. So I'm now going to save this. So starting from the big ends, this one, this end, if you like, these are the main blocks. Let's first of all get these in. I mean, you could put some crown on these surfaces in an ideal world, but often, especially on a concept model, I wouldn't necessarily bother with those particular surfaces because they're sort of just draft surfaces going straight down. But if you want to, of course, you can add crown on that. That would make things, you know, even better. But so I'm going to go through this lot. So I'm going to go edge here. Important we have position influence of 1 so that the edges line up exactly. And then we'll do, I'm going to just check if I go into there and try and align that with G2 on, which I know we've done already, but I just wanted to see whether it says edge, and it does say edge. So we know that that edge is flowing. If it doesn't, if it's not, then that's could cause a problem. So let's just align that one to there, and oh, that's nice. That's nice when that happens. Just work goes in by luck. I mean, it's obviously very close anyway. And then we'll just align that one to there. So that's kept. Oh, and that's worked as well. I think it's because we started off with MS Draft surfaces. So the only thing in there that I wasn't 100% happy with was this CV, which is not super critical, but it just looks like it just wants to sit a bit further round. So I need to make sure I'm picking a single point. And what am I doing? This point here. So let's just slide that along. If you slide it along, you're not going to make much change, but just make it sit a bit happier between those two ends there. So pretty much those surfaces are now done. Let's just isolate that lot. So I think it's good to, as much as we can, trim things out. So we've obviously got overlapping surfaces here. Let's go into the cross-section editor, clear everything out. So here we haven't got anything here. Just to make it absolutely clear that I'm not trying to create anything that's good. I'm just going to trim that out just so we can see it. It really does. It just helps in the visualization as you're building models. So I'm going to project that down in the Z direction. So I just put in a random curve there, and so we can now see what's going on there. This one, again, we could just extend that down if we wanted to, and that one across, for example, however you want to do it. So you can just then visualize what's going on and see whether that's any good or not. And it'd be worth taking off, just deleting all the locators, hitting F12, which just shades everything up, and then just rotating that around and just seeing if it, you know, if there's anything nasty on there that doesn't look right before we start to move on to anything else. And obviously, you know, you can take it to whatever level you want to. If you want to put some, oh, what's happening here? I thought it was about to crash. It sort of hesitated for a minute, but you know, you can put your highlights on, you can put iso-ang on and horizontal, vertical, whatever you want to do, but that looks absolutely fine. So we've got that lot in there. Obviously there's some work to be done still around that area. I think it was probably worth putting in that bit. So let's go and bring our smooth curves back. So we didn't have a curve there. I wasn't sure whether we'd done one of those or not. I can get rid of those curves, don't really need them anymore. Maybe it's a good idea to keep them. Maybe I'll just create another layer. There's no harm in having more layers. If we can tidy it up afterwards. So just gonna move that there. Call that curve smooth 2, and change the color of that to green. So this one is very similar scenario. So I think in this case we've just got a very straight area and then a curve. So we don't really need, we just need that to be done in 2 curves, I think. So we'll do that in the plan view, and like we did before, we've got a plane somewhere, wherever our planes are. So looking under plane, we've got Z1 500, which is that one there. So let's go into that one. Pick that plane, so we're sitting above the geometry. It just makes it easier when we shade the model up and you've got the lines on it, so it's just easier to see. Now I'm going to rotate it that way just to see. It's when you squash the view up, when you use this non-proportional scale, it's good to have it across the screen like that. So I'm using the right mouse button and Control and Shift to do that. And but we don't really need it squashed up at this point. But once again, I'll go from this top edge and just put some curves in there. So just pick a couple of points, and the reason it's gone like that, let me have a look at my general preferences, modeling. So I've got X, Y, and Z there. If I change that to free, that would come up in the right place, but I'm not going to bother to do that. It's because I've rotated the view. That's why that it then points that in the X direction. So let's go and move that. Oh, okay, I do need to change that then. So go into general preferences, because I rotated the view. I need to go into the general preferences and change this to free, and then I can move that around with the left mouse button to get it into the right location. So I'm just going on the shading here. Now we don't want a straight line because it needs to lead into this corner. So what you want to do is increase the degree to at least 2, maybe 3. And this is where squashing that view up would be useful, because it's going to be very subtle. But if we just put in a straight line, then what you'll end up with is a very hard look to where it starts to blend, and you want some subtlety, I don't know whether I'm not above the geometry here, am I? I can see that, because that curve is not where I think it is, which is strange. But obviously I did something wrong. I was probably just not in the view that I thought I was in. So when I was in top view, I wasn't quite in top view. And I could see that curve was disappearing under the geometry, which makes it very difficult to see. And so that's why I want it on that Z value up there. So I'm squashing that up just so I can see, even if in the mesh, it sort of wobbles around a little bit, which is fine. But what I want to do is tighten this end. I want to accelerate this end, and the way to do that, the first thing to do is to just push the CVs together a bit at that end, so I can move that one along there, so that'll give us a better chance of being able to get some acceleration into this end. And then it's very subtle, because I want to keep close to the data, but I don't want to follow the data. And so it's a very subtle thing, but it will make a big difference when we put the curvatures on, especially. You'll see it. So let's bring the curvatures in here and increase the scale. So you can see that's nice curvature. It's accelerating into that corner, and then when we put the blend in, it'll be so much better. So let's go and put a curve on there. I'm just putting a degree 1 curve in there. Now that point there, I go around to that view there. Let's just undo that. That's better. So that's coming up in the right Z location. So I don't need to rotate it, to be honest. It makes no difference really in this case. So somehow I've managed to create a degree 2 curve there. I don't know how quite I managed to do that, but never mind. So I can drop it down to 1. If I then hit the space bar, it's fixed it as 1, and then I can increase that again. I'll make it degree 3 because I want that G2 at that end. So let's go into Object Edit, Align, G2 there into this curve here. So that's the first thing, and then we obviously want to move this point around as well, something like that. And then I'm going to take the CVs off here just so we can see what's going on. Now I don't know whether I put history on there, didn't, so I need history on there. I might actually make that G3 and increase the degree a notch, because then it'll be so much better. It's moved that CV, which really it shouldn't do, but it has done. And then we query edit that. By making it G3, we should get beautiful curvature into that corner. Then it's really, really soft and nice. And I've got history on there, so I can go back to this at any time. It gets soft. If you want it softer, then you move it this way, and then push these CVs that way. If you push it this way, then you end up trying to get continuity, and all your CVs end up here, and you get a nasty result, because you'll see on the curvature there. It actually doesn't look too bad, but in general, that's a bad thing to do. If you want to make it softer, move it that way, and then push these CVs into the corner. That's always the thing to do. So you want the spacing of these CVs to be progressive, from big to smaller, and that's the way you'll get a very nice shape. Let's just change the scale down to 3. Maybe something else. So the scale is different to this one. So what I should do is pick both of those curves, just make sure they're working to the same scale, so you can see what's going on there. And you can see that because we've got G3, we've got a beautiful curvature coming into that corner. The trick is to try and get it close to the data, of course. But because I've got history on, I can go back, and I don't know why I'm fussing too much with this, because I've got to create this in 3D in a minute anyway. But if I put the CVs on that main curve here, and I'll take the CVs off here just so we can see them more clearly, then we can obviously adjust these, because we've got history on that blended corner, and we can adjust those so that the blended corner changes as well. So it's a combination of that and changing the corner curve that you want to look at, not just the corner. If you want a bit more shape in here to follow the data a bit more closely, then we can increase the degree. So I've increased it to 5. So we've got a bit more control at this end. So I think that'll be more than good enough. Let's delete those locators. And we can come out to this view now. And I'm going to save that. So we want to bring this curve down, because whereas on the other side we had these 2 surfaces, here we've only got, well, we have got a surface on here, but we haven't defined that one yet. We need to put that one in. I'm just going to bring this down, so it'll be roughly in the right place, but we'll have to modify it later once we've got the other surface in place. Now I need to switch back to my general preferences under modeling and just change this to X, Y, and Z on the mouse buttons, and then I can drag that down in the Z direction to somewhere close. And of course, it's impossible to compare it with the data there. So we obviously need some surfaces, but we also need to rotate that somehow, so we can see what's going on a bit. So let's just, I'm just going to delete the history off there, and then I'm going to put a pivot on here, and then I'm going to rotate it. So I'm using the middle mouse button to rotate it in Y, because it's not completely flat, of course, but it gets us roughly in the right place. And I probably should have, built the surface in here, and then I could project it down. That would have probably been a sensible thing to do, but never mind. Maybe I'll just come out of there. Maybe we just leave that as it is, and maybe I should start building this surface. So let's do that, because that would be a better thing to do, really. So let's bring everything back in. So back in bonnet detail layer. So I need to put this surface in here. But I'm going to, yeah, shall I put that surface in? Doesn't really matter the order, of course. Yeah, we'll do that. Now, one thing we did have these references here. So this was under curves 0, 1, and I can tell that because it's because of the state it's in. That it's just a reference there that we can see, but we can make that pickable. One thing I was trying earlier on, which I've never tried before, do you remember we created that curve? And if we go into here, you can see it's degree 1, 16 spans. It's not a curve that we'd ever want to use, but actually it may well be that we could use that directly. So if I isolate that, and in fact the area that we're mainly interested in is from sort of here to here anyway. But if I make that into a copy, so I'll just stay in bonnet detail. So I'm going to copy that, so Control C, Control V, and then I can do Control T on the selected one. So we've actually got a template. That's a template there, which is the degree 1, 16 spans, but we've also got a curve, the same again. We can put the CVs on that, and obviously it's of no use. But what is interesting is if I go and change the degree, so let's change the degree, let's make it 6. And then we change the spans. So we change the spans right down to 1. Obviously, the CVs that we get are rubbish, but we get something that's an approximation of the original. And so this is another way of creating these curves. Whereas before I was manually doing it in the top view, making them nice. This is another possibility, because the beauty of this is that we're actually very close to that data. You can see in this, the side view, we've got the right sort of Z values. But I can now, because I've got the template on, I can now adjust these. So I can just move those up and down, make them look better. I mean, I've got to do it in 3D. So actually, it's probably the top view I should start off with, because that's so far out. But if I just move those in, I'm just moving them in the Y direction, just to see how close I can get, but I suspect I'm going to have to push them along as well. But we're sort of in the right ballpark in terms of 3D by doing this, and it's a best fit to that, that very rough data that we had to start with. Actually, that's worked out quite well, but we can always push them a bit towards the front end where we've got more acceleration required. And we know that we're starting off from somewhere that was close to the mesh, and this is not going to deviate too much from it, but we can end up with a good curve there. Let's squish the view up. So the thing about that is that I just want to see where these CVs are. So this one, pick one point and just move it. I'm using the middle mouse button there to just move it in the Y direction, just to make sure that these CVs all go one way, that because this is supposed to be convex, the CVs should also be convex. So just make sure of that. And then we'll look at that in the side view and see how far out in Z we are. And that looks not too far. It's lifted it up a bit because I've moved that point forward in X. But actually this is quite an efficient way of getting to that curve, in fact. So there's our curve. I'll get rid of the template because we don't need that. That's a copy of a copy, I think. Maybe it isn't. What else have we got there? We got 2 curves there. No, we haven't. So I will keep that template actually, and I'll make this a template as well, just to hide it. So that's the other way of keeping it, is it in the background. Now you can see that we're deviating. We've deviated quite a bit from that. It needs to come out a little bit here. So let's just take all of our CVs off, and we'll, on that one curve, we'll bring the CVs back in. But with curves, because you can't tell, you know, how the surfaces are going to behave off the curve until you put the surface in, then there's no point in refining the curves. The important thing is to get the surfaces in really as soon as you possibly can. So there's no point, I think, in going beyond that. I've just moved those in the Y direction so they look a bit closer to where I think the shape's going to be. Now I'm trying to create this surface in here, and it goes, that surface sort of starts from here but washes out to nothing, so there will be some more surfaces to come off the front there. I'm not sure where they'll end up going, but we'll add those later on. But this goes all the way along here, and then it sort of disappears. It's difficult to say where that goes, to be honest, at that point, and we won't find that out until we start to put the surfaces in. So the simplest thing to do is to just use this surface here. I'm going to use MS Draft, which seems to be one of my favorite tools, I think. And we can put in a surface there, flip it around the other way. I'm going to change the draft angle to 0, just so it goes straight across for the time being, and then we can drag that along there. So a lot of this surface, of course, is just in space. And the reason I'm doing this is one big surface, even though most of that's cut away, is that you then get a much more consistent blend going through here. Otherwise, if you start building this as separate bits and pieces, the chances are you're going to have a struggle to get this all to blend together. If you can do that as one big surface and then just trim it out to that area, that's fantastic, because then you save yourself an awful lot of effort. So we're just going to rotate that around. I'm looking at this front section at the minute, so just here. So I'm rotating the whole thing, and of course the shape will develop as we go back and do something different. Now we can come out of there, and I'm not sure whether I put history on there. Yeah, so let's delete the history, and then we'll look at this where it comes together here. So by the time you get here, it's disappeared. It doesn't really exist. So we could actually make this shorter. So let's just make that a bit shorter. And you can see some difference in the angle there. But what we don't want to do is follow every single lump and bump, because again, you'll end up with not a smooth surface. The section here looks pretty close. Let's just take the CVs off the curve. So if you're going to modify this, if you're going to adjust that in any way, then it's best not to use individual CVs too much. Try proportional modification. So if we wanted to bring that down, say, then do proportional modification to start with, at least, so that you're doing a nice blend, rather than, so you're not just moving a local point, which then gives you a problem somewhere. Now, there's definitely seems to be, between here and here, it seems to drop down, but then it sort of rises up. So I don't want to make that any more complicated than that. I'm just going to leave that as it is. And at some point, we may well trim this, or convert this from this main block. So although we're starting off with this main block, we may trim convert it, because one of the things that we would want in this little area is a little bit of crown on that very local, and we can't get that with a big surface. But if we start off with a big surface and then cut it down, it's a much better approach than just starting off with lots of little surfaces. And the other thing is we do need some subtle crown on this as well, overall. So let's just do that. And it's not this, when this all comes together in these areas here, because of the angles here, and it's so subtle, and the slightest mismatch of these surfaces, and this will be all over the place. So we shouldn't worry too much about exactly where this is at the minute. So I want because I've got proportional modification on, it only lets me pick one point. So I need to come out of that and just say move and switch to hulls, and I'm just going to move that up a little bit. in the Z direction. So we've got something of the same sort of crown that we've got at this point, and I'm ignoring what's going on in here. That will have to develop as we build the model. Okay. So I guess what I do need to do then is to actually start looking at how all of this comes together. And I think before I do that, I think I'll probably leave that till next time. What I'm going to do next is to build this little side surface. So let's put in the body. So if we look at the body and you look at this section here, this body doesn't quite extend far enough down. You know, this has got a dip in it, and this has got a different length to here. So let's just extend that this way, and we just watch the CVs. The CVs are pretty interesting, you could say, on this surface, because it's such a big surface. But that's fine, because you know, you could refine those CVs. Of course, if it was A class, you would be looking at those CVs in a lot more detail. But they're fine. It's a big, simple surface, and as long as when we extend it, it doesn't do anything crazy, completely crazy, then we're okay. Now, when I extend that, I want it the same length as this. So if I Control Alt on this edge here, you can see it puts a little blue cross on the end there. Doesn't quite get to the end, but if I drag the mouse up that way, it suddenly snaps to the end there. So now we've got those the same length, and I need to make sure that those surfaces are still, wherever the edge is, are still aligned, and they're not quite. And that's because I've extended it slightly. So let's go and check that out. So that was that surface there. So we need to, I am going to save this again. It's a very small angle. It's 0.1, which isn't very much, and it's because I've extended it at this stage rather than earlier on. I just do that, and we'll untrim that. So I have to untrim it to be able to align it, and then we're going to just align that, and hopefully it will be a very small change. Maybe I'll just go for G1, and it's going to be a partial edge, and we've got that. And it's saying there's still an angle, and so let's go vector as well, make sure that's in the Z direction. So I can see we've now got two diagnostics on top of each other, so who knows which one's which. So the best thing to do there is to delete both of them, because there's obviously, that's not right. And so let's go back into here. I've got create history on. Let's go in there, and we've lost the continuity check. Let's put that on. So I just aligned that in G1 because I want to do the smallest possible change here, and I'm hoping that if I switch this to G2, it'll say that it's fine. Well, it's 0.11, so it's very close. That actually changes it quite a lot, which is rather annoying. But because it's 0.11 and I don't want to change this very much, I'm just going to see if I can get away with just moving that point with lots of mouse sensitivity on, and just get that down below 0.1, so it just disappears. Yeah, great. And so because obviously I've got other surfaces hanging off here, which is a worry, of course. So let's see what's happening there. So let's go into, let's clear all these sections off so we can see a bit clearer what's going on. I'm hoping that this is all going to be still aligned. Oh, right. That's a shame. Right. Okay. So what I'm going to do, it's a shame that I extended that so late in the day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that. Actually, I'm not going to bother to delete that. I'm going to go back to my previous model. This is why I save models regularly, and which is that one. And I'm going to keep this one. So I'm going to pick up from this model that surface there. Just out of curiosity, I assume this was all matched. Yeah, it was. It was all beautiful. Right, so let's take this surface here, and I'm just doing Control C on it, going into the other one, and then if we go into Edit and we want to paste it into the same layer. So we say same layer, and it'll come up in that layer. So if I just take body off, you can see it comes up in the same layer. And then if I go to my stages, so these are all the models that I've got open. The one that I've just had open, the old one, is there. I can delete that. So I'll pick that and just delete that. Delete selected stage. And so we've got back to the one that we wanted. Now we've got some locators in there which are from the other surface. So let's go into surface con, I hope anyway, unless something's terribly gone wrong. So that's okay. So great. Okay, so I'm going to extend this again, and I'm going to extend it to that point there once more. So I'm using Control Alt, dragging to the end. That is so strange. So maybe that was aligned, and maybe I was looking at a. Let me just double check that again. Well, that's so strange. I think I must have been looking at a locator that was an old one, which is why it's a good idea to delete them every so often, because there's nothing wrong with it. It's actually extended perfectly fine. So all that fuss for nothing. So that's good news in the end. Right, let's go there. So now we've extended that through, so we've got something for this surface to hang off. Now I was thinking, you can see from my lines there that my initial thought was we'll put in a surface down here that intersects this one, and then we'll put a blend between the two. But if you look at that shape there, there's really no point. We can go from over here all the way up to here in one surface. That will be absolutely fine and saves us having to build more surfaces than we need. Okay, let's go into surface there. Now, every so often, you know, there's so much going on here that I just want to get rid of some of this. And so what's in body side? That's body side, body, there we go. I mean, when you're looking at somebody else's screen, I know it's quite difficult to see sometimes what they're doing. Once you're actually in the zone yourself, you can see, you can see I've got loads of lines on the screen, but you sort of get used to knowing where they are. But even then, I was finding that confusion of lines very difficult. And it's worth just, obviously tidying things up and just clearing away the clutter. So on this one, I'm going to use this same trick again of creating these curves. So I'm going to go create a new layer. I'm going to drag that up to there, somewhere there. I don't know why it's not actually updating there, but never mind. So let's go into curves, and I'll call this, my numbering's all gone to rubbish, but it doesn't matter. And I'll make that green for the time being. And I'm going to just put in my degree 1 curve going through here. So let's go into curves, edit point, degree 1, and I'm going to try and estimate where the edge of this blend should be. So it's going to be somewhere along here, somewhere along here. I'm not doing anything accurately, as you can see. It's actually quite a big. It's probably out further than even I'm drawing, to be honest. And I'm not looking from one section to the next, really. So this goes all the way to here, somewhere there. Eventually, it'll just blend out to nothing. Could be anywhere up there, really. Something like that. So that's our degree 1 curve. So that's on that layer there. So I'm going to do that trick again, where I'm going to just take that curve rather than trying to design a new curve from scratch. Let's take that. I'm going to do Control C, Control V to copy it, and then Control T, which is my hotkey for template. So I've now got a template there. So I've got a template and I've got a curve, and I'm going to change that curve and just see what happens. So let's make that degree 6. I mean, it's guesswork what degree to go for. Obviously, you want to keep it low. So just like before, we can move these CVs around freely. Let me take the mouse sensitivity right down, because we're going to rough this in first of all. You can see there's quite a lot of SE shape there, which is fine. I mean, having weird CV patterns, what looks a bit weird, isn't necessarily a bad thing. Usually I don't want CVs that look like that, but let's just copy that across here. So if I created CVs like that, it doesn't look great. And I've been saying put all the CVs on one side of the shape. So this should be, strictly speaking, that's that CV there. It should be up here. This one should be down here, so that we have CVs which are similar to the shape. So we've got this S shape, so you'd expect the CVs to be S-shaped. But if you've got something like that where they're crossing over and it doesn't actually reflect what's going on the curve, it's not necessarily the end of the world, because when we put the surfaces from that, we're going to probably split them up at some point. So if you look at detach here, if I detach somewhere along here, when I detach that, you'll find that the CVs often look far more sensible. I mean, they still dip down a bit there, but not as bad as this. So it's not necessarily the case that having zigzaggy CVs is always a terrible thing, especially if you're splitting things up later. But I will try and make those more conventional, if you like. It's usually if they're that zigzaggy, it's an indication that we haven't pushed the CVs as far as we should towards one end. But at the same time, you don't want them too pushed towards one end. That's not a good thing either. So now these are in 3D. So what I'm trying to do is get a sort of progressive spacing, so they're small, slightly bigger, and then towards this end, because it's much flatter, they're much more regular. Let's have a look at that in side view. So we need to move those up and down in Z. So I'm only moving them in Z because I know in top view I've sorted them out. And again, we've got a zigzag here, which we don't want, so we're going to push those up and down to try and sort that out. I mean, it might be that I move that to the left as well, just to get the spacing a bit more equal there. But if I do that, of course, I've changed it in top view, which might be what we have to do. And then if necessary, we can go back into the top view and move it again, but that looks absolutely fine. So let's bring everything back in. So we've got a curve now pretty much in 3D where we want it to be. Now, the only mistake I've sort of made there, or didn't really think through, but that's life, that's what happens, is when I go and pick those two. So I'm going to put a surface between those two, and I go into top view there. When I put a surface between those two, the spacing of the CVs on here and the spacing of the CVs on there are different, and actually that's a mistake in a sense, but in another sense it doesn't actually matter. So we know this curve is roughly where we want it to be. So if I just did this, if I went skin between, let me go into skin and open that up. So I'll put that on, and that on. Now what I can do is modify the range, because it goes all the way to the end there, and I actually want that to cross there, so that's one thing. But you can see the CVs, because the CV spacing is different on this curve to that surface, then it's not really ideal, because we've got these, it's sort of skewing. It might be necessary, but if we can get away without that, then it's so much better. It'd be a neater solution. So rather than using skin, if I use MS Draft again, and we go and pick that side there, I'm going to flip that surface around. So I'm actually creating a surface going this way, and of course, if I put in 0 draft and it's in Y, those CVs go perfectly straight across, which is great. And but now I need to get it to this curve. So if I go into surface edit and I go trim convert, so I'm going to trim convert 3D trimming Z, that to that, and then do that. Now we've got CVs which are pretty close to this curve in plan view. Bearing in mind this curve we made up completely anyway. So let's take the CVs off there. So that's actually worked out pretty well. We could adjust those if we wanted to get a better fit to that, but it really doesn't matter because we've made it all up anyway. And then of course in side view that won't be quite correct. So what layer are we on here? Bonnet. Some point I'll change all of these. So bonnet detail, let's just put that into bonnet detail so we've got some order to it. When I go into side view, of course, this is just coming straight out in Y, so we need to drop that outer edge down. So in fact, it's not very much at all. It's almost on that curve. So I'm just going to pick individual points. I mean, you notice again, I'm just starting from degree 1 and doing that. I'm not even sure whether I need to do that because I'm going to have to align this to this surface anyway. So so let's get rid of that curve there. We change that color first of all, and we'll take those curves away. And then what we're going to do when we look at the sections, of course, because this is completely flat, it doesn't make any sense at the minute. We need to get it into the sections there. So let's bring our sections on. I'll just put the X sections on. I don't need the other ones on, the Y sections. So we need to align it into these surfaces here. So let's go and pick that surface, and that's those surfaces. This is another point where we have got to split this. So it's got to be split at that point there. And now for now, I'm just going to do that in that view there. So we'll detach that to here. Now, will it do it? I never know quite whether this is going to do it. No, it doesn't. So it's because we're above the geometry, I think. So again, the construction point is really handy here. So we can just put that in exactly the right spot. I mean, the other way is to put a line across. Of course, that would be another option there. And then we're going to detach. And then this time we can pick up on that point. So using Control, and I'll just get rid of that point. And then what we want to do, because this needs to be G2 continuous into this surface here, so we'll make it degree 3 here, and then we're just going to align it and see what happens. The chances are this edge will need adjustment at some point, because I've just done this by eye, and it's not going to be guaranteed to be in the right place. Well, yeah, that's just showing us what that would do if it was degree 2, and of course we need degree 3. So it just means that we've pulled it down. The CVs in the middle aren't necessarily in the right place. That's actually not too bad, which is nice. It's actually done a very good job there. I'm quite pleased with that. So let's go into query edit. I think I've got history on there. Now the thing is that you can see it's digging into the data too much there, so that implies that this edge is slightly too far inboard. What's this one doing? Again, that's digging in a little bit too much. So this edge all needs to come out slightly, and so I think at that point we'll leave that there and come back to that next week and refine that. But that was quite a good. I was quite surprised at how well that's turned out. I think it just needs, you don't want that digging in too much because it'll look really, well, just to look too extreme. And we do need to get back to a situation up here. This is going to be the interesting thing, is trying to get this all to blend into nothing. Eventually it just disappears and it's going to be very soft and subtle. And the closer we can get to the data here, because the data works very well in general. So you know, why deviate too much from it? And that will help us get into this area here, I think.